Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, My aunt tried to use the "you don't need money, I'm giving you experience and exposure" for some art I did for business. She got called out. Now her entire scam and life is unraveling, and while I don't like to gloat, I can't help but snicker. That was Monday. First thing Tuesday morning, I had a meeting with my school's licensing legal advisor, and she helped me draft a letter stating since no legal transfer of ownership had taken place, Aunt J was to cease using any of my work immediately. We also wrote up an invoice for my time, materials and shipping up to that point, with a very friendly 15% family discount, and that if Aunt J were to work out a payment plan she could continue using the finished pieces. I emailed them to her. I was very sincerely trying to handle this like an adult and not involve my parents or my uncle, Dad's brother and Aunt J's husband, but maybe 1.5 hours after I pressed send on the email, my mum called me. It basically went like this: Mum, Aunt J just called and completely chewed me out over what an ungrateful brat you are. What's going on? I explained the situation to her and apologized because I really was trying to handle it myself. She was apoplectic mad and revealed to me that Aunt J had been pulling this kind of crap ever since she married my uncle. Mum really wished I would have called when this first started, and she would have advised to me avoid ever doing anything with her. I said I was sorry that I was in so deep, but I felt like I was handling it okay. My mum asked if it was okay if she got involved. I said that was okay. Aunt J got her real estate license last fall and had been telling my uncle that she was locked to be a franchisee, or whatever you call it in real estate, for a nationwide real estate company. I'll just say Promax. My mum called a local Promax office and asked who she should talk to because one of their agents had commissioned several thousands of dollars worth of professional promotional materials and was refusing to pay. She was put on the phone with whoever was the highest ranking agent in my hometown, who was incredibly confused because all the local offices were under his guidance and they had a promotional materials contract with a local graphic design company. My mum gave him Aunt J's name, and holy crap, Aunt J was using this multi-million-dollar real estate company's name and materials when she wasn't even part of the company. I mean, this is a huge deal, and she could literally be facing years of legal trouble, and since real estate licensing is a fairly small world in our state, she is almost certainly going to lose her license if Promax pursues her. I honestly don't know enough about real estate to know how or even if she was making this work or if she was just biding her time until the franchise did come trough. I have no idea. Maybe her scam wouldn't have been figured out if she'd just paid me. But it gets even deeper than this. Aunt J had just bought a huge new Cadillac Escalade over Christmas, and since she said it was for work, she told my uncle that Promax was helping her finance it. My dad called my uncle, his brother, to let him know what my mum had found out as a heads up. My uncle freaked out because obviously if she wasn't part of Promax, then she wasn't getting generous financing terms from Promax on her new $80,000 car. My uncle ran his credit, and it looks like Aunt J had taken out 2 credit cards in his name and maxed them out, he thinks, for the down payment on this car. So not only was Aunt J screwing me over, she was in a roundabout way stealing using the established name of a multi-million-dollar company, but she committed identity theft against her own husband too. And now she's been exposed because she refused to pay me. My uncle told my dad that he's known that last straw has been coming for a long time, and this was a last log. He's contacting divorce attorneys immediately in hopes he doesn't get taken down in case Promax decides to pursue real legal action against her. He's going to have the lawyer advise him on what to do about the identity theft. Basically, Aunt J is screwed in every way imaginable. I've never been one to gloat, and I always take pity on people who are having a hard time. I'm not this time. The next one is titled, Hoa tried to use a 40-year-old rule to stop them from repairing hurricane damage and got the shaft for their trouble. A few months back, as you all may remember, Florida got pretty beaten up by a couple of hurricanes. My folks live down there, and while none of the damage that they sustained was life-alteringly horrible or home-destroying, homeowners' insurance kicked in and they had some water damage through the roof. They also needed a new one because of all of the shingles that had come off, debris that had punctured it. My folks looked through roofing options and determined that a metal roof would be a great option to reduce damage, maintenance on their home. Plus, it would serve as a more energy-efficient option with passive solar collection and fewer thermal losses in the summer, winter. It's more expensive, but my dad was basically our personal finance incarnate while I was growing up. He's in his 60s and has finally concluded that he has duck you money so long as the community is concerned, so the roof was a good investment. It looked like a win-win-win with that roof. Then they reviewed the HOA and saw that, as of 1989, metal roofs are prohibited in the neighborhood, subject to fines and mandatory removal. Reviewing the bylaw further showed that it was clearly referring to older, crappier tin roofs, not a proper metal one like today's market provides, which looks great and has all of those other benefits. My folks wanted to play by the rules, though, and called up the HOA to explain the situation. HOA was friendly and said that they would be looking into that bylaw, and that my folks weren't the only ones who requested that they be allowed to have a metal roof. My parents couldn't get a roofing contractor in for a few months anyway, too much demand since everyone else's roof got wrecked. So they waited a few weeks and got nothing new out of the HOA. Tried again a few weeks later. Nothing. After 2 months of this, they said duck it and started construction on the metal roof. Popular opinion in the neighborhood was on their side, and the roof was covered with a tarp that wouldn't last forever. The new roof got installed over the course of a few days, and then we found out the HOA's crappiness. The neighborhood has a nice brick sign out front that says, "Welcome to neighborhood name." It's very classy, very nice, and was very damaged in a hurricane. The HOA was strapped for money due to other repairs dues, and some prick had the bright idea to impose as many fines as they could on the neighborhood to pay for these repairs, starting with my folks. They served my folks with a letter claiming that they were in violation of the HOA, and demanded a $25,000 fine and that they remove it. Which is, of course, absurd. My poor mother is very much a play-by-the-rules sort, and she was worried sick. Dad's ex-Navy and a contract negotiator. He essentially checked his 60-year-old knuckles and said, "Oh, you little idiots wanna play, do ya?" So they set about researching and making some calls. Poor mum kept waking up at 1 a.m. unable to sleep, and I felt terrible for her as she went through this. But then, they had a breakthrough. A few weeks after being served, I'm fuzzy on the timeline since I don't live in Florida, it may have been less, there was essentially a burn them at the stake meeting of the HOA where my parents could defend themselves for an absurdly short amount of time and the HOA could rip into them for daring to defy their wrath. So my mum, because she's more social, has a better temper than dad, comes up to speak, and lets the HOA know that they can't do this. HOA smirks and says that they sure can, they have a 40-year-old statute saying that they can. Mum says, "You do. But I have state law on my side, which supersedes your statute." Turns out, there's a law in Florida stating that an HOA, or really, any regulation, cannot be used to prevent an eco-friendly improvement from taking place on anyone's private property. And wouldn't you know it, the passive solar of the metal roof counts as an eco-friendly improvement. Turns out, the roofing contractors have dealt with similar stuff before. When Dad mentioned what was going on to them, the contracting officer pulled out a few letters of accreditation and a few past cases where the court had determined that their product was eco-friendly and forced the HOA to pay all legal fees. My mum produced all of this for the crappy HOA, who had to admit that this was in fact ironclad. Strapped for money as they were, they couldn't afford to pay a lawyer. HOA head growls, "Is that all?" Mum turns up the sweetness to 11. "No. I see in the bylaws that we can vote to impeach board members at any HOA meeting and to elect their replacements. I move to impeach all of you. I nominate my husband," and she rattles off a list of names. HOA is stunned. While Dad looked into the legal, Mum looked into the new neighborhood. Popular opinion was on their side, and the hearing was public for the neighborhood. Mum convinced a majority of the homeowners to attend and remove the board for their crappy policy. With that, my parents are now on the all-new board, and Dad is putting his contract negotiation skills, own craftsmanship skills to work repairing the front entrance. And metal roofs are now allowed by the all-new HOA. The next one is titled, "Neighbor kept reporting me to the HOA for petty things, opportunity not to pay her back and I took it. I found out today that my revenge was complete, so I came here to share it. My neighbor, who we shall call Kirsty, would report us to our HOA for literally everything she didn't like. Trash can still on the street at 5 p.m. on trash day, reported. Kids bike outside while kids are still playing, reported. Didn't mow this weekend, typically I do this Monday nights, reported Monday morning. Dog barking at 2 in the afternoon as she and her dog walk on the path behind our house, reported. In many cases these were not issues covered by the HOA, but due to repeated reporting the board did fine us and I had to go spend the evening waiting through a 2-hour meeting to have them removed. This kept happening and was driving me nuts. Both my wife and I spoke to her and tried to find out why she felt this was okay, and she told us, "You just need to do a better job being a good neighbor." Fast forward to early this summer. She posts on a neighborhood website sharing a video about the anti-vax movement. In general, the replies are pretty aggressive about telling her she is full of it, but she keeps pushing back, leading to a super long post about how we all are wrong and we should listen because she is a doctor. She signs it Dr. Christie, last name, naturopathic physician. At this point I am mostly just wondering what the heck any kind of doctor would be against vaccines. This made no sense to me, so I started digging. I did find that Christie was listed as a doctor on sites where you could find physicians. I dug more into what exactly a naturopathic physician was and found that in my state of Colorado they are regulated and required to maintain a license to practice. I checked into it and found out the following: 1. Christie was not in the state database as a naturopathic physician. 2. The board who regulates it has an online reporting tool. At this point I took all the information I had, grabbed screenshots and checked my timeline and reported her as claiming to be a naturopathic physician when she was not. I then followed that up with this post on the neighborhood website. This is a hot button topic for me, and because of that and Christie signing her post as Dr. last name, I had to dig some. I for one am a huge fan of including whole person treatment. I think doctors of osteopathic medicine are wonderful as they work to integrate whole health into the picture with well-researched medical best practices. Naturopathy less so, which is the problem here. One researched article breaks down a lot of the issues quite well. It is almost 13 years old, but still quite good at explaining the valid concerns. I further checked as Colorado does regulate naturopathy and I could not find any Christie last name listed there. My thought was that it is entirely possible that she holds a license to practice in Colorado and my search wasn't working, but even just searching her first name or zip code or my town or town near us provides no results for a Christie last name. There are 2 naturopathic doctors in town near us. At this point Christie locked the post and later deleted the entire thing. I was pretty dang happy that she removed the post, but today it got better. In the mail I received a copy of the cease and desist letter that Christie received from the state about a month ago. It told her that she must cease and desist her practice immediately. The next one is titled, "Yell at us for parking in a reserved space? Get arrested and evicted." Disclaimer: Unit 8 was rented by Rick and Tara, not owned. Last winter, around January, me, my family, and close friends were staying at our condo in Vermont for New Year's to celebrate, ski, etc. My dad owns the 8-unit complex our condo is in, and all but one had people up for the holidays. There's a decent amount of area for parking, but when there's a lot of people all there at once, it can get tight. So one night after returning from the mountain, we parked in the spot closest to the stairs to unload everything easier. Our parking lot isn't one with actual spots or anything because it's just gravel and dirt, so it's really just eyed out and first come, first serve. A few hours later, my brother went to the car to get something from the car where there was a cardboard sign left on the car. The sign read, "Reserved parking for Unit 8. Handicapped," on both sides. And yes, they forget the N in handicapped on both sides as well. Like I said, there's no specific spots for anyone. Unit 8 was one of the smaller units on the ground level, about half the size of the rest. The couple that rented there was sketchy, to say the least. They had to be in their mid-20s, but we never saw them much, and didn't know too much about them. Let's just call them Rick and Tara. Another 20 minutes later and I go down to the car to get some forgotten gloves. As I unlock the car, the lights alert them someone's at the car, and through the window Rick starts yelling at me, telling me I have to move the car by the morning or they'd have it towed. At this point, I can also realize that Rick is off of something, so I subsequently ignore him, grab my things, and head back up. I get into the condo and explain to my dad the experience I just had with Rick. At this point he'd had enough and decided he was gonna go down there himself to handle things himself. So he goes down there to talk to him. My dad was really the only person that had met him before, but it was briefly during the leasing of their unit. He knocks on the door and it's about 30 seconds until Rick angrily answers the door. He crankily asks, "What do you want?" and my dad politely explains that no spots are reserved and that it is first come, first serve. Rick instantly starts freaking out, saying that it's a handicapped spot and that they're gonna call the landlord. They had little experience with my dad when they leased the place about a year before, and in that time he was diagnosed with cancer and lost a lot of weight. With that, his appearance changed drastically. Rick didn't realize he was speaking to the landlord and kept his rant going. As my dad was going to lay it out for him, he noticed on a table in the living area that there was a pipe of sorts. Paired with the behavior and appearance of Rick at the time, my dad concluded it was a pipe of sorts for drugs. He backpedaled out of the conversation and returned back up to our condo. When he got back in, he called the cops explaining the situation and what he saw. 30 minutes later, cops pull up and start talking to Rick. Going off what my dad told them about the pipe, one of the cops noticed it, but this time out in the open with a bag next to it. At that point it was revealed that they were smoking crack and they were both arrested. Along with that, my dad also evicted them from the property for violating terms, obviously. We ended up renovating the whole place afterwards because who knows how long they'd been smoking that inside. The upside is that the cardboard sign still hangs in the living room and gives us a laugh each time we pass. The last one is titled, "They made me do most of the work, so I had a plan to get them expelled." Rightfully deserved. This happened about 12 years ago while I was studying aeronautical engineering. Due to some money-grubbing legislation tactics, most who have gone to college know about the unnecessary courses that are tacked onto the degrees in order to graduate. One of those courses for my degree was a business class. Seriously, you'd think these guys would understand that most engineers don't do the business side of things. Thankfully, we had a teacher who was understanding of the fact that many of us in the class were bored out of our minds. I'll admit to having always been a geek nerd who loved making good grades. If I don't understand something, I run at it hard to try to change that. This class stumped me for quite some time, and then a nightmare of a project was announced, one worth 50% of our grades. The school was a small one, the class a little more than 30 people, and I was assigned to work with 3 people I knew from other classes. We had problems straight away. 2 of the people remembered me from a calculus class that they barely passed as the person who sailed easily through and decided to dump their portion of the work on me straight away, knowing I wouldn't allow myself to fail. They were right. At first, my other group member tried to pick up the slack as well, pulling hard to do a difficult project in a subject we barely understood. I'll admit she was a trooper. Unfortunately, she was also someone easily manipulated, and our 2 slacking group members began applying pressure during the semester for her to take the work and allow them to present it. The day of the project finally comes and I'm sick as a dog, pretty much quarantined in the clinic due to bronchitis. I managed to send a message to the teacher. The 2 slackers managed to wrangle the presentation from the girl who worked with me and presented it to the class, declaring that they had done all of the work and I was skipping class because they had told me that they were going to tell the teacher what happened. My initial grade was an F. I was beyond upset until I realized something important. Part of the project involved a written report, of which I held the only copy since I was the one to type it up. Cue the revenge. Privately I went to the teacher with my notes and the report in order to get the grade 1 earned and to get him in on the plot. He agreed since it seemed fun and he planned to fail them anyway for academic dishonesty. Publicly, there was no report. The classmates that had attempted to take all the credit began to approach me, first demanding the report. Most of the time, my response was, "But I didn't do any work," in a sickly sweet voice. Next, they attempted to act all buddy-buddy, trying to convince me that it had all been a joke and promising that they'd tell the professor that I had done some work, giving me some credit so that I had the possibility to pass. This was met with stony silence on most occasions before I told them that I'd rather fail than let them pass. Things escalated after that to include the door of my dorm room being rapped on at odd hours of the night, shoving, and them stealing my backpack and notebooks in order to try to find the report themselves. One of them even asked my roommate to let them search for a report I had written and forgotten for our group didn't have her as my roommate the following semester. Things finally came to a head in the last week of classes. I had held out on them for a month, not telling any of my groupmates what I had done, and enough time had elapsed that even if they were to turn in the report now, it would be so late that they'd still have failed. They hadn't even attempted to do the report themselves, and the girl who had worked with me was in hysterics over the very real possibility of failing the class. It was what the teacher and I had been waiting for, and he finally decided to return the reports. The 2 slackers glared daggers at me as the teacher returned the report of every other group in the class before stopping in front of them. He was holding what looked to be one extra report, and they were immediately looking hopeful. He set a single sheet of paper on one of their desks before moving to the desk of the girl who had worked along with me and set the report on her desk. "I had to dock some points for dishonesty, but you and your partner did decently," he stated before moving on. My partner realized what I had done. We only got an 82 on our project, but it was far better than the 0 that our ex-group mates received. I had been carefully documenting the harassment that the two slackers had put me through and ensured several witnesses saw some of what they did. 2 days after being informed that they were failing, the pair had a new problem. I gave the evidence to the administration of our school and the teacher reported academic dishonesty. The administration did a bit more digging and found that the pair had been making trouble for some time and a number of students reported similar problems of having their work stolen. The slackers were expelled. Thanks for listening.